VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Thank you for joining us on Crosstalk here on VCY America. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Economic Forum has been operating since 1971. They indicate that they are bringing together government, businesses, and civil society to improve the state of the world. And yet, when you realize the many initiatives that they're involved in, it really is not about improving the state of the world, but rather taking control of the world. I was looking at the tentacles of the World Economic Forum and saw how they reach out into all segments of our society through their 9 centers. They have the Center for AI Excellence, the Center for Cybersecurity, the Center for Energy and Materials, the Center for Financial and Monetary Systems, the Center for Frontier Technologies and Innovation. There's the Center for Health and Healthcare, in which they promote what they call equitable healthcare systems. The Center for Nature and Climate, promoting net zero climate action. The Center for Regions, Trade, and Geopolitics. The Center for New Economy and Society, shaping inclusive, equitable economies and societies for all. And also the Center for Urban Transformation. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the World Economic Forum is seeking to transform our world in a number of ways. Joining us in discussion today on this issue, we welcome back William F. Jasper. He's an investigative reporter and senior editor at the New American Magazine. He is an author, a journalist, and commentator, and for more than 3 decades, he served as an accredited correspondent at the United Nations in New York and UN summits around the world. Bill, so good to have you back with us here on Crosstalk.
Always a pleasure, Jim. Thank you.
As I read about these various centers from the World Economic Forum, it really encroaches on every facet of life. And I mean, as you really get down to the nuts and bolts of these centers, we could take an entire program just taking one day and talking about one center, doing it 9 days in a row, and still we'd only scrape the tip of the iceberg as to what the WEF is all about. It really is all-encompassing, isn't it?
Well, it is, and the thing that is so disturbing about this is that this is not just a congregation of billionaire industrialists and tech magnates, etc., who exercise a tremendous amount of power in the marketplace. The real focus of their power and influence is that they have strategic partnerships, direct partnerships with governments and with the United Nations. We have focused quite a bit at the New American on exposing the strategic partnership that Klaus Schwab, as head of the World Economic Forum, signed in 2019, or maybe it was 2018, with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, a strategic partnership which really formalized what had already been underway for decades. That is, that the World Economic Forum is a private institution of very powerful individuals, including the leading capitalist leaders around the world, as well as communist dictators such as Xi Jinping, who's one of the big wheels at the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. So you have the globalists and communists working together in a private capacity in a strategic partnership with the United Nations and individual governments and with the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, to build what they call a new world order, which is centralized control over everything, as you just pointed out. All these different areas, and one which I don't think was mentioned there is their World Food Center, which they established a couple of years ago in Wageningen, Netherlands. And so, I mean, they want to gain control over virtually everything to reset the whole world. That's what their Great Reset, as they called it, is all about, to reset the world politically, economically, socially, spiritually, politically. They want to completely remake, transform, re-engineer global society. Now, they have the potential to do that, and that is why we've been trying to alert everyone around the world, but particularly Americans, to this design, which really would spell the end of all the freedoms that we know and treasure here.
And as a matter of fact, you've been doing that for decades, giving a wake-up call for people across this nation to wake up to what's going on. And as you point out, this is all-encompassing. I mean, from economy to trade to healthcare to our energy supply, a food supply, and on it goes. They leave no stone unturned. Let's talk about the leadership just a little bit of World Economic Forum. Now, Klaus Schwab was its founder, was chairman, but he stepped down as he was a subject of an investigation. What was this investigation about, and what was the result of the investigation?
Well, the investigation was really about small stuff compared to what we were just talking about, we were just mentioning. Supposedly he was being investigated internally because a whistleblower within the World Economic Forum, or a couple of whistleblowers, claimed that he was misspending money from the World Economic Forum on his personal things, for massages, which may or may not have been massages, for luxury living in various venues around the world when they have their World Economic Forum meetings, whether at Davos or in Beijing or whatever. So mainly it was about personal misspending of the organization's funds. Well, compared to what we have just been talking about,
yes,
which is redesigning, taking control over the whole planet, that's rather small stuff. So they had this internal investigation. Nothing was publicly released about it except to say that we've investigated and we have found no substance to the charges that either Klaus Schwab or his wife Hilda were engaged in any unethical, inappropriate activities. Nevertheless, he stepped down, and we have him replaced by two of the biggest globalists on the planet, which are Larry Fink, Lawrence Fink, the chairman CEO of BlackRock, which is the largest largest asset manager on the planet, and the chairman of Roche Holdings, who is the billionaire head of
Andre Hoffman.
Roche. Andre Hoffman, head of the Roche Holdings big pharma outfits. So those two have been working very closely with all the rest of the globalists at the World Economic Forum. Globalists, and I repeat this, communist leaders, because this is something people need to realize, that the top globalists are in bed very tightly with all of the top communist leaders of South Africa, of Brazil, of Cuba, of Russia, of China particularly. And we see that today. Before the program, we were talking about the current things going on at the World Economic Forum. On their current webpage, they just today, on September 2nd, they give a big promotion to the China Development Bank's big effort to invest in South Africa's critical minerals, and they want the rest of the world, the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, wanted to join in this. And so this is an effort to give South Africa, which is run by the African National Congress, which is an adjunct of the South African Communist Party and is closely allied with China, with Beijing, with Russia, one of the BRICS countries. This would be to use our tax dollars to join with the China Development Bank in making South Africa the center of all of these vital critical minerals that include the rare earth minerals. And the thing that is so incredible about this is that the United States has some of the largest rare earth and critical mineral deposits in the world. We don't need to go investing overseas, and particularly in communist-dominated countries,
right.
when we have them right here. But the socialists, the communists, the Marxists, the anti-energy people here in our country are keeping ours all locked up and make us dependent on those foreign sources.
And that's what that's seeking to do, is make us dependent upon even rogue nations, to be dependent upon them for these rare earth minerals. But I'm thinking also, Bill, of like our pharmaceuticals. I mean, it's outlandish to me to think that we're, waiting upon communist China here for the health and well-being of people across our nation through pharmaceuticals. And this is why President Trump is really, trying to pull back on the reins here and to bring things back here. He uses the term "Make America Great Again," but really to seize upon what we have as our nation, not to be dependent upon these other nations, but to be independent. And I can only imagine he is throwing a huge monkey wrench into what's going on right now.
Well, absolutely, and that is why you see both the globalists and the communists attacking him so relentlessly, because this is, in our lifetimes, we have never seen this kind of a challenge to this burgeoning new world order that has been underway really on the fast track ever since after World War II. The globalists, as exemplified by the Council on Foreign Relations and later the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg meetings, along with the Communist International meetings, have all been pushing toward this internationalist global governance, world government under the United Nations. And so we have seen all of these different attacks. One of the things that we haven't mentioned so far, which is right at the center of everything right now, is the whole migration attack. The World Economic Forum has been pushing for this migration and the swamping of Europe and the United States with hostile invading migrants, millions of them. And this is where we see Communist China, all of the United Nations, so-called non-aligned nations, all pushing for this. And right now, that is why we see this really vigorous pushback all over Europe right now. And just today in the World Economic Forum, they feature an article by a gal from the School of Economics, which is the Fabian Socialist Society's school, their premier institution, talking about this. And she says, every country in Europe is feeling this press from the far right. So they say anyone who believes in having secure borders, who believes that we shouldn't be able to be invaded at will, is far right. And of course, you'd expect that from the Fabian Socialist Society, but the World Economic Forum is pushing the same thing, as they've done for a long time.
William F. Jasper is our guest today, investigative reporter and senior editor at the New American Magazine. By the way, their website, thenewamerican.com. And friends, we're talking today about the World Economic Forum. It's all about control. We're going to delve further into this and what it is that they are doing today. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, where do secular scientists say the universe came from?
You know, Chris, it sometimes tickles me when evolutionary scientists mock creation thinking for claiming that creation was ex nihilo, or out of nothing. But then they turn around and talk about the Big Bang, when a single speck of matter exploded to form all the stars and galaxies and planets and people. But, you might ask, where did that speck come from? Some scientists now say it appeared out of nothing as a quantum fluctuation in a vacuum. In other words, matter appeared from nothing, and then it exploded. Which would you rather believe, evolution ex nihilo or creation ex nihilo? At least in creation, we have a God that is powerful enough to accomplish the job. And that's the back to Genesis perspective.
Thank you, Dr. John. For more on the foundational principles set forth in Genesis, visit us on the web at icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. William F. Jasper with us today, and talking about the World Economic Forum and the aspect of control that this organization is promoting. And Bill, we're talking about the WEF, and we mentioned the new leadership there, two men who are appointed as interim co-chairs. I'm not sure how long their appointment is going to be as interim, but Larry Fink, the BlackRock CEO, Andre Hoffman, the vice chair of Roche Holdings. And you have written recently that Fink is not only one of the planet's most well-known business executives, but he's also one of the most outspoken globalists. And you indicate he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, also of the Trilateral Commission. And for those not familiar with these organizations, what exactly are they?
Well, the Council on Foreign Relations is the brain trust of the globalist oligarchy. That is, it has been for over a century been the leading organization promoting the push for world government. First to push for the League of Nations, which they didn't succeed in getting the United States on board with that. So then, after World War II, they pushed for the United Nations, and were successful in getting Congress to go along with that and join in. And the reason for that was because they intended to build it out into a global government. And our latest foray into this was our July special issue of the New American on the global grab for power, and it's a full 80-page report on the United Nations. This is the 80th anniversary of the United Nations this year, from 1945 to today, 2025. 80 years, and it's an 80-year record of betrayal and atrocities, of genocide. If people aren't familiar with that, they need to be. One of the things that's a feature of this particular issue is our centerfold map of the world, which shows the United Nations operations all across our globe using their information, their data, their symbols, showing the massive footprint that the United Nations has developed, already creating the infrastructure and the superstructure of a world government. Dozens and dozens of agencies that have huge marble and glass palaces all around the world, in Paris and Buenos Aires, in London, in New York, in Washington, D.C., in Nairobi. In virtually every major country, we've established these giant bureaucracies with organizations such as, we mentioned the migration situation, the Organization for International Migration, the OIM, is a United Nations agency which has been funding and directing and promoting these migration invasions all over the world with our tax dollars. Since we are the main funder, the U.S. taxpayer is the main funder of the United Nations, our tax dollars have been going to pay for this invasion. And the OIM is one of over 15 UN agencies headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, which coincidentally is also where the World Economic Forum is headquartered, in Geneva. We usually think of it as Davos, but that's where they hold their confabs. But their actual headquarters is right there in the center of all these UN activities in Geneva.
Now, you also tell us about the Andre Hoffman, the vice chair of Roche Holdings, and indicate he's a member of the Royal Institute of International Affairs. So give us a word about that organization as well. Are you with us, Bill? Okay, looks like we have lost our guest here, William F. Jasper, and we're going to try and get him back on the line with us today. We're talking about the World Economic Forum and the fact that it's all about control. And we're seeing over every facet of society, I mean, every aspect of it, whether it be that of our food supply, whether it be that of our energy, whether it be, that about governments, everything, all aspects of this. It is all about this push for globalism, for them to have control over the entire world and pushing. And I find it very interesting how they're pushing this migration attack upon nations around the world and seeking to push populations upon nations to invade them, in essence, to take them over. We see the attempt that was happening here within the United States. We also observe what is happening within Europe and other places as well. And friends, we need to understand that this is purposeful. It's been deliberate. It's been part of the plan that is coming from a World Economic Forum. And so, friends, you need to take account, and that's what Bill is keeping us informed on, and certainly the importance of understanding where things are at in this world scheme. Klaus Schwab has been a huge supporter of what was called the Great Reset, also Agenda 2030. And we are talking about totalitarian world government that is coming from these organizations. And, Bill, I believe we've got you back with us here.
Yes, I guess those globalists didn't like us talking about it.
Okay. So I had mentioned that you talked about certainly the Trilateral Commission. You've also talked about here in brief the Council on Foreign Relations, but you also mentioned that Andre Hoffman has been a member of the Royal Institute of International Affairs. So give us a word about that organization.
Okay, yes. So the Royal Institute of International Affairs, more popularly known as Tentacles, because that's where they hold their meetings, is the British senior sister to the Council on Foreign Relations. It was one of those formed by a secret society. That's what Cecil Rhodes called it. He was the richest man in the world at the time. In South Africa, diamond and gold fortunes. And he called for a government of the world was his sole desire. That's what his biographer, how he put it. He wanted to see a government of the world by a ruling oligarchy elite. And so he formed several secret organizations, one of which then, the Milner's Kindergarten, formed the Royal Institute of International Affairs. So for over a century, the RIIA has been pushing for global government. I read their materials religiously. They have been one of the key organizations promoting this. The Council on Foreign Relations works hand in glove with them. Then in the 1970s, quite a few years after, over a half a century after the CFR was formed, David Rockefeller, who was at that time chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank and chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, formed another organization, not to compete with it, but to cooperate with it on a global level, the Trilateral Commission. And that organization was going to bring about a closer cooperation between three different parts of the world. That's where the tri comes from: Europe, North America, and Asia. Principally Japan, but now that has been expanded to include China and many of the other countries of Asia. And it's a very select group of only a couple 300 individuals, many of whom are former members of governments, leaders, presidents, secretaries of state. Most are in banking or big tech and big pharma. The financial and industrial elites. And their purpose, the same as the World Economic Forum and the Council on Foreign Relations, is to knit together the makings of a world government by uniting us, centralizing power politically, economically, socially, and spiritually. They want to unite all of the churches and religions all together into one global spiritual unity. And so basically they're promoting spiritually New Babylon, the new Tower of Babel, to go along with the UN's political, economic, social Tower of Babel.
How do they propose to finance this? I mean, the 2030 agenda, it all works hand in hand. What is the source of funding? They've been relying upon the United States for a lot of this funding. President Trump's been pulling back. Where's the funding source?
So this is you hit on a very important point. So the way this has usually worked is that the big tax-exempt foundations, the Rockefeller, Ford, Carnegie, MacArthur, these are all run by globalist Council on Foreign Relations members. And so they provide the seed money. They provide money to get hundreds of NGOs up and running, and then they transfer that to the taxpayer. How do they do that? Well, after these organizations are started, then they apply to all the different government agencies, and as we saw from the DOGE investigations, particularly U.S. aid was giving billions of dollars to all of these NGOs. So we have an NGO chorus out there, a whole army of people claiming to represent all different so-called stakeholders. They claim.
Bill, we're losing you here. Okay. Looks like we are losing Bill Jasper again. We're going to try and reclaim him once again here. Very interesting talking about the just as Doge pointed out, all of these NGOs, non-government organizations that have all been established and then started and then paid for with taxpayer dollars. And we see those funds that are continuing over and over again to be pushed in to the funding of these organizations that are working to subvert our own nation. In essence, we've been funding our own destruction through these NGOs, coming through taxpayer dollars. And Doge has exposed a lot of this. They've pulled back the reins on so much. And I think we've got you back here again, Bill. We're talking about the financing of this, and literally we have been financing and funding our own self-destruction.
Absolutely. That's the most maddening thing about this. It's bad enough when all these tax-exempt foundations pour all this money into it, because we're paying for that too, indirectly, in that they don't have to pay taxes on their fortunes because they have put this money into their tax-exempt foundations, which are supposed to be used not for political purposes, but that's precisely what they're used for. And so they should have their tax-exempt status removed from them, because our tax burdens increase as theirs decrease, so that they can use their tax money. But their main function, as I said, is to serve as seed money. They want to get these various enterprises, these NGOs up and running, and then transfer the cost to the taxpayer directly. And that's what we have been seeing. And that's why they're screaming so loudly, because the DOGE report the DOGE investigation was able to dig out with their inside investigation and subpoena power and ordering these documents to be released. We have been reporting on this for decades, but we have to use what is publicly available. And so we were able to report for decades on the billions of dollars, but now we got a lot more detail officially exposed, and this is what is causing the gnashing of teeth and the wailing by all of those who claim that.
Well, I tell you what, we got to take a break here. William F. Jasper, our guest, the World Economic Forum. It's all about control. We'll be right back.
Relationships have been shattered due to a lack of forgiveness. It's impacted marriages, parents and children, siblings, and even church families as a whole. Some have said that forgiveness is the most difficult commandment that we are given as Christians. Why is that? Perhaps it is because it strikes at the core of our pride that says we deserve better than we are getting. Perhaps it seems if we do forgive, we are letting that person win in a situation that hurt us in some way. In the book, Forgiven People Forgive, Pastor Jeff Miller shows us where the rubber meets the road. At the heart of why we should forgive is the fact that God has forgiven us, thus we are commanded to forgive. It's so easy for bitterness to take root in a heart that is unforgiving. Forgiven People Forgive is available for a donation of $9 or more to VCY America. Call 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. William F. Jasper with us today, talking about the World Economic Forum and its matter of control. Bill, in the last segment, you spoke about the July 2025, the New American issue, in which you did quite a spread on this. Are copies of that still available, that people can order that somehow?
Oh, yes. You can get the PDF of it or the actual print magazine. So that's both of those are available at thenewamerican.com, and the title is Global Power Grab.
Global Power Grab. Okay, so that would be from the July 2025 issue, and look for Global Power Grab. Put that in the search engine and get that information. Let's hit another aspect of this, and that is what you have used a term called digital dictatorship, in which you comment on things like a social credit system, biometric ID, central bank digital currency, and more. Let's talk about this digital dictatorship as it relates to the World Economic Forum.
Yeah, well, that is very central to the real scary scenarios about the Great Reset that the World Economic Forum is proposing, because there's been no secret. All you have to do is go on to weforum.org, and you'll find that's for the World Economic Forum, and just plug in China or social credit system. You'll see that not only does the World Economic Forum have on its board of directors, its board of trustees, members of the Chinese Communist Party, high-ranking members of the CCP, but they have invited all of the top leadership of the Chinese Communist Party to come and speak at Davos, and not only that, have sponsored Davos in China, in Beijing and in Shanghai and other centers in China, where Klaus Schwab and his replacement, Larry Fink, have gone and have expressed the greatest admiration for the communist dictatorship in China. And in fact, the new co-chairman, Andre Hoffman, boasts in the Roche corporate webpage that it is building Shanghai, which is a communist Chinese city, into the world's third largest strategic center. And so they boast that they have been there longer, established the first joint venture in China. They've been there longer than anyone else. So this is the mindset. Bill Gates, as we've reported, who's one of the World Economic Forum leaders and one of the richest men in the world, was inducted into the Chinese Engineering Hall of Fame and was welcomed there. We've pictured him there many times, meeting with Xi Jinping and other top leaders of the CCP. And it's the same with Ray Dalio, with Warren Buffett, with many of the top richest people in the world, who are usually categorized as capitalists. They are there in China, praising China, calling for China to be the new head of the New World Order. That's what George Soros called for when he was there. And what is it that they are so much in admiration of? Well, it's the social credit system. They believe that everyone should have a digital ID, that you should be tracked, that all of your carbon footprint, that is, all the energy that you use, whenever you travel, all of any of your economic activity would all be not only monitored, but it would be controlled. And if you then violate any of their censorship rules, that is, in divulging what they designate as disinformation, which means anything which contradicts the party line, you can be canceled. Your ability to travel, all of your savings, all of those things would be in jeopardy. And that is a very frightful future that they have envisioned for us. Yeah. So Americans need to to realize this, that these people who you see on many of the economic programs and news programs who act like benevolent philanthropists, they really lead a double life, and they really are pushing for total government control over all aspects of our lives, and a government in which they intend to be the oligarchy in charge.
Friends, our phone number to Crosstalk today, 800-733-9829 for your questions and or brief comments, 800-733-9829. We're talking with William F. Jasper, who is the investigative reporter and senior editor at the New American Magazine, their website, thenewamerican.com. Our number, 800-733-9829. Bill, there was a story on Slay News over the weekend that the WEF is calling for a ban on the general public owning their own vehicles and living in single-family houses. They don't want people to have their own vehicles. They don't want people to have single-family houses. I mean, they're really seeking to abolish private property.
Well, yes. So it became a big item several years ago when the Great Reset was first put out, because the WEF had the infamous video, in the future, you will own nothing and you will be happy. In other words, you won't even own the clothes that you wear. You will rent them all. Well, what if the World Economic Forum, the would-be global commissars, decide that you don't get any new clothes, that you have to wear the rags you have, or you even have to turn those in? That is really the situation that people face in communist countries. And so this whole push for this is really a restatement of what, we published back in 1992 when the United Nations had its World Environmental Summit in Rio de Janeiro, the Earth Summit. And I was the only reporter there who wasn't one of the globalist establishment media people out of the more than 10,000 reporters that were there. So we reported on it back then. The head of the Earth Summit was one of the World Economic Forum founders, and that was Maurice Strong. He was in charge of that Earth Summit. And he said back at that time, we quoted him extensively, he said, the time is over for people in the Western countries, industrialized countries, to have refrigerators and air conditioning and all of these things which are causing economic or ecological destruction to the planet. And clear back then, he was saying we have to restrict meat and other protein consumption. We have to get rid of having lawns and lawnmowers and all of those things that we associate with modern industrialized society, including individual cars and transportation. So already clear back then, at the beginning of the where Agenda 21 came out of that Earth Summit, and then that translated in 2015 into the Agenda 2030. And so we now have seen how they are restating that with even greater emphasis right now. And this has been in planning for a long time, and they're pushing it forward. As you've probably told your listeners before, we've reported on it extensively. When it comes to food, they think we should be eating crickets and worms and bugs and spiders, that we can't have any more meat and high protein like that. We have to start getting used to eating bugs. Wow. So, of course, they're not going to do that. You're not going to see the folks in Davos eating bugs. They're going to be dining on caviar and filet mignon.
Friends, you're listening to Crosstalk on VCY. William F. Jasper, our guest. Our phone number, 800-733-9829. Let's begin with Wayne in Gregory, South Dakota. Wayne, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I bet not 1 in 10 Americans really know what you guys are talking about today, and it's the most important thing that every American should know. And it's been kept out of our media, out of our educational system and everything. And now we're on the edge of the cliff, and people don't even know we're there. But the question I've got for Bill is Islam and the Marxists are basically in partnership today to take down the United States and Israel. And they both think that once that's accomplished, they'll be the ones in control, right? Mm-hmm. And what I'm wondering is, do you see any realistic solution to the statement I just made? Or, as I believe, I think is just biblical prophecy coming into focus.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, many refer to it as the red-green axis, Bill.
Right. That's we've been referring to it as that for many years, and have done quite a few stories on that. Some of the earliest digging out showing that the Communist International, which goes back to the 1920s, after the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, that Comintern, or Communist International, was run by the NKVD, which later morphed into the KGB and today is known as the FSB. They have had a program all along of persecuting religion. They primarily, we know about it in the West because of persecution of Christians of all denominations, the burning down and destroying of churches, the torture and murder and imprisonment of religious leaders, of all pastors, of bishops, of priests, of metropolitans of the Orthodox Church, etc. But they also have done this in all of the non-Christian countries that they have taken over. So they've resorted to persecution of Muslims, of Buddhists, Hindus, wherever they have taken over. However, they recognize that they've never been able to stamp out religion, particularly Christianity. And so in tandem with persecution of actual murdering and martyring of religious believers, they also try to subvert them. In fact, they have done that. They've done that in every single country and every single culture. And they ran into very strong resistance in many of the Muslim countries because the communists were recognized as being atheists. And so many of the Muslims fought back, and Lenin complains that all of his communist leaders that he's sending into Turkmenistan and Tajikistan are being murdered by the Muslims. And so they realized that with the Muslims, as with the Christians, as with the Jews, as with the Buddhists, that they had to infiltrate and subvert them as well. And so today, in dealing with the situation in around the world where we have militant Islam, we are dealing in some cases with actual resurgence of Islamism, because that has ebbed and flowed since the 7th century when Islam first appeared, even long before the Bolshevik Revolution. But since then, we've seen over and over again where communist leaders have used their ability to subvert Islam and to radicalize it.
And really to go to the tenets of Islam, as we've talked about so often here on Crosstalk here with Usama Daktak and Shahram Hadian and others. Friends, we'll take more of your calls after the break. The number 800-733-9829. Back in a minute.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Over the Labor Day weekend, President Trump stunned a lot of people with a post on Truth Social. He is saying that he wants to get to the bottom of the COVID shot. He has bragged for years about warp speed and what a great success it has been. And he's even been booed at his own rallies by his own supporters when bringing up the success of warp speed, the military that was behind the distribution of COVID-19 bioweapon shots, as many believe. Well, now he has apparently heard the truth. Someone has gotten through the veil, and he is not a happy camper. He says he wants the answers now. He wants to know, was warp speed a big success or not? This is great news, folks. Pray for President Trump to get the right information to protect us, the American people, from the pharmaceutical industrial complex. I'm Brandon House.
William F. Jasper, our guest here today on Crosstalk. We're talking about the World Economic Forum, and it's really all about control and talking about a number of aspects over our entire way of life and life not only here in the United States but around the world as well. Let's get right back to the phone lines. Jeff is calling from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hi. As I've learned on the Crosstalk program, there's been a movement before the UN to take over, have the United States take over everything from Panama to Greenland and make it a one trading partner, kind of like Europe did. Now that we have a president that is literally, as we speak, assembling a military to invade Central America and has openly admitted that he wants to make Canada the 51st state and conquer Greenland, I'm wondering if you now support this movement to make North America one trading partner in alliance with the New World Order.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. And that's about a 3-hour discussion here, William. But in
well, it's a very important point, yes. And it is a concern. So, okay. President Trump has done some amazing things. As I said, during our lifetime, we haven't seen this kind of movement against the New World Order that he has taken. However, there are some concerning things. Let me just tick off briefly some of the things that your colleague, that Jeff, mentioned. Okay, the Canada thing. I would be opposed to. We would be opposed to. Having the U.S. militarily take over Canada or to bully them into joining with the United States. However, we have, just to the north of us in Alberta and to some degree in Saskatchewan, a movement by the Canadian citizens who have, in Alberta, qualified a referendum to be on their vote next year on whether they will declare themselves independent from Ottawa, from Canada, and either be an autonomous, independent nation, or whether they would join the United States. Now, if they decide to do that on their own, and they have very good reason, many of them, for doing that. They've been robbed by the Trudeau government and the other governments before and after him for decades, and they've had it. So they say they're going to either go independent on their own or they're going to join the United States. That would be different than us taking them over or forcing them into the arrangement. Mm-hmm. I don't like the threatening language that President Trump has used with regard to Greenland about, well, we're going to get it one way or the other. That isn't how we do business here, and that's probably, from his standpoint, a way of negotiating in tough language. I think that's the wrong way of going about it. I think that kind of tends to make the people who in Greenland were leaning in this direction to probably go in the other direction, because nobody likes to be bullied into something like that. Yeah. The situation in Venezuela is something entirely different, and we don't have all of the access to the information, the intelligence information, the military intelligence information that the president does. But under proper circumstances, could he be justified in military deployment against Venezuela? Absolutely. And I don't know at this point whether the information that he has indicates that Venezuela is directing the Tren de Agua and other drug cartel offenses against the United States, but that is a credible charge. And so those are not necessarily contradictory to everything that we've been talking about here previously.
Yeah, thank you for the call. I know you probably have more you'd like to ask, but we're going to have to move on here. There's another call in just a few minutes left. And we also had conducted on Crosstalk at one time a full interview pertaining to Panama as well with William Jasper. And you can go back to we just rebroadcast that in early June of this year. If you go to crosstalkamerica.com, put in the word Panama in the search engine, and we conducted an interview called Reclaiming the Panama Canal. We're going to squeeze one last call in, and this is Mark calling in from Monroe. Mark, you're on the air.
Yeah, Proverbs 22:7 tells us the borrower is servant to the lender. Mm-hmm. My question is how can we possibly remain independent if we are $37 trillion in debt, and especially when the debt's going down, if that's not going into susceptibility to bondage, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. Thank you. And Bill, we've got 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay, absolutely true. You put a finger on a very important point, something we've been stressing for decades, that we cannot spend ourselves into prosperity. We cannot continue this. And so this is one of the areas that President Trump really has to tackle. And he's trying it in several different ways with the tariffs, but the spending has to be brought under control.
Indeed. And we cannot sustain the trajectory that we are on as a nation, and certainly it's going to lead us toward collapse, and certainly that's the very thing that we are blowing the trumpet in regard to as well. Bill, all of these issues that we've talked about today, and people said, we don't get this from other sources. Well, you have been covering these issues for many, many years, and certainly through interviews that we have done on Crosstalk, and Alex Newman and Tom DeWeese from American Policy Center and others. It's critical for people to keep informed and to get the information they learn to share with others. For those who want more information about the New American, how can go about doing that?
Well, the best way is to go to our website, thenewamerican.com. We have videos, interviews, documentaries, news stories up there, new every day, and we have access to our monthly magazine, as well as our Insider Report, which I edit every week. That's available online at thenewamerican.com.
Bill, thank you so much for carving out the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
William F. Jasper, our guest today, again, investigative reporter and senior editor at the New American magazine. And friends, more of an educational piece today to warn you about the World Economic Forum. It's all about control. And really, you're targeted free, your private property under attack. Thanks for listening.
Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.